was 24 when she arrived at estate, carrying a small suitcase, a worn coat, and the heavy burden of a life that had changed too quickly. The vast duchy stretched across green hills and endless flower fields, beautiful enough to belong in a dream, yet the servants who greeted her spoke in quiet voices as though the walls themselves were listening. They warned her about the master of the estate. Do not expect warmth from Duke. Had heard his name before, everyone had, at 25 was famous throughout the kingdom as the Cold Duke. He was wealthy, respected, and feared. People admired his sharp mind and striking appearance, but few knew anything about the man beneath the noble title. Some said he had no heart. Did not believe that. She was not searching for love or a fairy tale. She had arrived because she needed a future. After her father's death, his debts had fallen upon her shoulders, leaving her with little more than memories and determination. She had spent months searching for work, and becoming a personal assistant at estate was the only opportunity that could save her from losing everything. She entered the Duke's study on her first morning with documents carefully arranged in her hands. She had expected an older man, perhaps someone cruel and arrogant. Instead, she found a young Duke standing near the window, his dark expression matching the rumors surrounding him. Turned when she entered. "You are late," he said. Looked at the clock before meeting his gaze. "I arrived 5 minutes early." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Then you are already arguing with me." "I am simply correcting you." The silence that followed was uncomfortable. The servants who had accompanied her looked terrified, as if she had committed an unforgivable crime. Studied her carefully. Most people lowered their eyes when speaking to him. Most people tried to please him, did neither. "You are not afraid," he observed. "Place the documents on his desk, should I be?" The question surprised him. "No one speaks to me that way. Perhaps no one has ever been honest with you." For a moment said nothing. He should have dismissed her immediately, he knew that. A servant who challenged him was a problem, not an asset, yet there was something about her confidence that caught his attention. She was not trying to impress him. She was simply being herself. That was unusual. As days passed, learned that was not cruel. He was distant. There was a difference. He spoke little, smiled rarely, and carried the weight of his responsibilities like a man who believed he could never rest. She noticed things others ignored. He stayed awake late reviewing estate reports. He remembered every servant's name. He secretly paid medical expenses for injured workers, but never accepted thanks. His kindness existed, but he hid it behind a wall of silence. Also began noticing things about. He noticed how she greeted every servant politely. How she repaired broken schedules without complaining. How she laughed freely despite everything she had lost. Her presence changed the atmosphere of the estate. The halls felt less empty. The mornings felt less cold. He did not understand why he looked for her whenever he entered a room. He did not understand why her absence bothered him. He only knew that estate seemed different when was there. Their relationship slowly changed from formal conversations to something neither expected. They argued about paperwork. They debated decisions. She questioned his choices, and he pretended to be annoyed even when he secretly respected her opinions. One afternoon, found struggling with a heavy stack of books. Without a word, he took half of them from her. She blinked in surprise. Duke helping someone. His expression remained serious. Do not make it dramatic. A small smile appeared on her face. You are kinder than people say. I am not. You just carried books for me. That proves nothing. Her laughter echoed through the hallway. Froze for a moment. He had heard many beautiful sounds in his life, but none had affected him like that. He looked away before she noticed. However, noticed everything. She saw the brief softness in his eyes. She saw the man he tried so hard to hide. And that frightened her. Because somewhere between their arguments and quiet conversations, she had begun caring about him. She told herself it was gratitude. She told herself it was curiosity. But she knew the truth. Her heart was slowly moving toward the one person everyone warned her to avoid. Meanwhile, found himself facing feelings he did not understand. He had spent years believing emotions were weaknesses. His childhood had taught him that people often left betrayed or disappointed those who trusted them. So he built walls. He became the Cold Duke. Yet walked into his carefully protected world and acted as though those walls did not exist. One evening, as the sun painted the sky with gold, stood in the garden watching her speak with the flowers she cared for. She looked peaceful there, surrounded by colors and life. For the first time in years, he wondered what it would feel like to have someone stay. But he quickly pushed the thought away. Love was not something he needed. Love was something he had survived without. Still, as turned and smiled at him, could not deny one thing. The woman who arrived needing a place to belong was becoming the only person who made a state feel like home. And neither of them realized how deeply that truth would change their lives. But the quiet connection between them was only beginning, and soon the fragile peace they had created would be tested by secrets from the past and the cruel voices of society determined to tear their growing bond apart forever. Months passed, and the bond between them grew into something neither of them dared to name. Their days became filled with small moments that seemed ordinary to everyone else but carried a quiet meaning between them. Still appeared distant to the world but saw the changes others missed. He no longer ate alone every evening. He no longer spent every free moment buried in documents. He started taking walks through the gardens because he knew she enjoyed them. At first, told himself it was simply because it was useful to the estate. She understood people better than he did. She noticed problems before they became disasters. She brought a warmth that improved everything around her. But that explanation became harder to believe with every passing day. He remembered the way she laughed, the way she looked at the world with hope despite her hardships, the way she never treated him like a powerful duke who needed to be feared. She treated him like a person, and that was something had secretly wanted for longer than he could admit. Noticed his changes too. The man who once seemed impossible to approach now waited for her opinions. He asked what she thought before making decisions. He listened when she spoke. Sometimes she caught him looking at her as if he wanted to say something. But he never did. That silence became the one thing she could not understand. She could feel his care. She could see his affection. Yet he refused to acknowledge it. The closer they became, the more painful that uncertainty became. The people around them noticed as well. Servants whispered that the Duke had changed. Some were happy for him, others were not. The noble families who visited estate began watching with sharp eyes. They saw a woman without a powerful background standing beside one of the kingdom's most influential men, and they decided she must have an intention. The rumors began quietly. Then they became impossible to ignore. She is only pretending to care. She wants his wealth. She is trying to become a duchess. Heard every word. At first she ignored them. She knew the truth of her own heart. She had never asked for anything. She had never wanted his title or his riches. She only wanted the man she had discovered beneath the cold exterior. But words still hurt, especially when remained silent. One evening, after attending a formal gathering at the estate, stood alone in the garden. The moonlight covered the flowers, and the peaceful view did little to calm the ache in her chest. Found her there. You left early, he said. Looked at him, did I? Yes. She smiled faintly. You noticed. His expression softened. Of course I noticed. Those words should have made her happy. Instead, they made her heart ache more. Do you ever get tired of pretending? His brows lowered slightly. Pretending what? That you do not care. The question surprised him. For a moment he looked almost vulnerable. Then the walls returned. You misunderstand. Do I? Yes. His answer was too quick. Too cold. Looked away. She had hoped he would finally admit something, anything. But once again he chose distance. Stepped closer. You should not listen to what others say. I try not to. Then stop letting their opinions affect you. She looked back at him. That is easy for you to say. They do not question your place here. His silence told her she had touched the truth. She continued softly. They only question mine. Wanted to reassure her. He wanted to tell her that she belonged beside him. He wanted to say that no one's opinion mattered. But the words stayed trapped. Because saying them would mean admitting how much she mattered. And was still afraid of that. Days continued, but the distance created by that conversation remained. Was still kind. Still professional. Still present. But something had changed. She stopped waiting for him. She stopped searching his expression for hidden feelings. She accepted that maybe he cared for her, but not in the way she hoped. Felt the difference immediately. Her laughter became quieter. Her conversations became shorter, and for the first time, he realized he was losing something precious. He wanted to fix it. He wanted to ask what was wrong, yet pride and fear held him back. He had spent years controlling every part of his life, but was the one thing he could not control. She had entered his world and awakened feelings he had buried. The realization frightened him. One afternoon found a small package on his desk. Inside was a book had mentioned wanting to read. He had purchased it weeks earlier but never gave it to her. He stared at it, realizing how many things he wanted to do but never said. He wanted to tell her she was important. He wanted to tell her that his days felt empty before she arrived. He wanted to tell her that the thought of losing her bothered him more than anything. But he had no idea how. Because love was unfamiliar territory. That evening finally asked the question that would change everything. They stood beneath the fading sunset in the garden where they often walked together. Her voice was gentle. Do you ever see yourself loving someone? The world seemed to become still. Looked at her. He saw hope in her eyes. He saw fear too. He knew there was only one honest answer he had ever believed. You know, the word left his mouth before he could stop it. His expression changed. Only slightly, but enough. No, she repeated. Looked away. I do not believe in love. The silence between them felt heavier than any argument. Forced a smile. I understand. But she did not. And who had finally noticed the pain in her eyes, realized too late that his answer had wounded the one person he never wanted to hurt. She walked away before he could explain, and for the first time felt afraid of the distance between them. The days after's question felt different at estate. Nothing had changed on the surface. The halls remained polished, the gardens remained beautiful, and the servants continued their daily routines. Yet something invisible had shifted between it. The warmth that once existed between them had faded into careful distance. Continued performing her duties perfectly. She organized schedule, reviewed estate matters, and helped solve problems with the same dedication as before. But she no longer stayed after their conversations ended. She no longer teased him about his serious expression. She no longer searched for the rare moments when the cold Duke allowed himself to smile. She had accepted what he had told her. He did not believe in love. And no matter how many gentle moments they shared, she could not force someone's heart to change. Noticed every difference. He noticed when she stopped laughing. He noticed when she no longer walked beside him through the gardens. He noticed when the estate became quiet again. But this silence felt worse than the one before she arrived. Before had been used to emptiness. He had built his life around it. He believed loneliness was simply the price of strength. Now he understood the difference. A lonely life was something he could endure. A life without was something he could not imagine. Yet he still struggled to admit why. He told himself he only valued her because she was important to the estate. He told himself his concern was responsibility. But every time he saw sadness in her eyes, his chest tightened. Every time she stepped away from him, he felt the urge to reach for her. He had spent years controlling his emotions. Now they were controlling him. The situation became worse when a group of nobles visited estate for a formal gathering. Had no interest in the event, but his position required him to attend. Attended as part of her duties. She wore a simple but elegant dress, and found himself unable to look away when she entered the room. For a brief moment he forgot the guests. He forgot the conversations. He only saw her, but noticed his gaze and looked away. The small action hurt more than he expected. Throughout the evening, nobles surrounded with questions about his future. They wanted to know when he would marry, who would become the next duchess, and which family would gain influence through the union. Answered each question with cold patience. Stood nearby, pretending not to hear. Then a noblewoman approached him. She was confident, beautiful, and clearly interested in gaining his attention. You cannot remain alone forever, Your Grace, she said with a smile. His expression remained unreadable. That is not your concern. The woman laughed softly. Everyone knows you need a suitable wife. Her eyes moved toward. The meaning was obvious. Noticed. His jaw tightened. He disliked the insult. He disliked even more that hurt it. The noblewoman continued, surely you do not intend to keep someone like her beside you forever. The words were cruel. Lowered her eyes. Felt anger rise within him. He wanted to defend her. He wanted to tell everyone that was worth more than their opinions. But before he could speak, another guest interrupted them. The conversation moved away. And the moment passed. Smiled politely for the rest of the evening, but knew it was not real. After the gathering ended, returned to her room earlier than usual. Remained in his study, unable to focus. The noblewoman's words repeated in his mind. Someone like her. He hated that phrase. Because was unlike anyone he had ever known. She was patient when he was difficult. She was kind when he was distant. She had given him warmth without demanding anything in return. And he had done nothing except push her away. For the first time, wondered if his fear of love had made him blind. The next morning he searched for. He found her preparing documents. She turned. Yes, Your Grace. The formal title felt strange coming from her. Before she had spoken his name. Now she created distance. I wanted to speak with you. About work. You know? Her expression changed slightly. Hesitated. He had faced enemies without fear. He had negotiated with powerful families. He had protected his estate through difficult times. Yet standing before, he struggled to find words. I did not mean to hurt you. Her eyes softened for a moment. But you did. The honesty stopped him. Looked down. I know you did not intend cruelty, that is what makes it harder. He heard his name. The sound reminded him of everything he was losing. I thought you understood me, she whispered. I do. No, you don't. Her voice trembled. You understand my work, my responsibilities, my actions, but you never tried to understand what I felt. Had no answer. Because she was right. He had spent so much time protecting himself that he never considered protecting her heart. I am sorry, he said quietly. It was the first time had heard those words from him. But apologies could not erase pain. I believe you, she replied. His hope lifted slightly. Then she continued. But I cannot stay somewhere I am constantly reminded that I am unwanted. The words struck him. Unwanted. That was never what he felt. But it was what he had made her believe. Before he could respond, she bowed politely and left. Stood alone. For the first time, he understood that silence could destroy something precious. The following weeks became unbearable. Remained at estate, but her heart was no longer there. Tried to speak with her several times, but she always found a reason to leave. She was preparing something. He did not know what. Then one morning, he discovered her room was empty. Her belongings were gone. The documents she had organized were perfectly arranged on her desk. Everything about the room was peaceful. Except she was missing. A strange fear settled over him. He searched the estate. The gardens. The library. The offices. Everywhere. But was gone. There was no letter. No explanation. No goodbye. Only emptiness. And for the first time in his life, Duke felt completely powerless. Because the one person who had entered his frozen world and brought it to life had disappeared without a word. The moment realized had left, something inside him broke. For years, he had believed he could endure anything. Loss, responsibility, loneliness, and the endless expectations placed upon him had shaped him into someone who never depended on another person. But when he stood in her empty room, surrounded by the silence she had once filled with warmth, he discovered the truth. He had not been strong. He had simply been alone. The desk where she organized his documents was perfectly clean. The chair where she sat while explaining problems was pushed neatly beneath the table. Even the small flowers she kept near the window were gone. Had not left behind anger. She had left behind acceptance. And that hurt more than anger ever could. Searched the estate again, even though he already knew she was gone. He walked through the gardens where they had shared conversations. He entered the library where she once laughed at his inability to choose a book for himself. Every corner reminded him of her. Every memory felt like a punishment. He finally understood the thing he had refused to accept. He loved her. Not because she was useful. Not because she had changed the estate. Not because she had become a habit. He loved her because without her, the world felt colder than it ever had before. Days turned into weeks. Continued managing the duchy, but those closest to him noticed the change. The man who had once been emotionless now seemed haunted. He stopped pretending he was unaffected. He stopped hiding behind his title. Because there was no one left to impress. He searched for any clue about where had gone. He questioned travelers. He sent messengers across the kingdom. He visited towns where she might have found work. Every path led to uncertainty, and every failed search made the regret heavier. The worst part was remembering the moment she asked him about love. He remembered her expression, the hope in her eyes, the quiet fear behind her question. And he remembered his answer. No, a single word. A word that had destroyed everything. Months passed before finally discovered the truth of what he had done. He was reviewing old conversations in his mind, searching for the exact moment he had lost her. Then he remembered the gathering. The noblewoman. The question about marriage. The sentence, "I will never love someone like." At first he remembered it as a simple truth. Then another memory surfaced. The thought he had never spoken. What he had actually meant. I will never love someone like again because there is no one else like her. The realization left him completely still. He had not meant to reject her. He had meant that she was different. Unique. The only person who had ever reached him. But he had spoken carelessly, and she had heard only the words that destroyed her heart. Closed his eyes. For the first time, he hated the walls he had built around himself. They had protected him from pain, but they had also kept him from expressing the one feeling that mattered most. He could not change the past, but he could find her, and this time he would not let pride stop him. Left a state and began his search himself. He traveled through villages and cities. He walked through crowded markets where he had never imagined himself going. He visited ports in small towns, asking anyone who might have seen a young woman with kind eyes and a quiet smile. Some people were surprised to see a duke searching personally. Did not care. His title meant nothing if he could not bring back. He continued because every road without her felt meaningless. Nearly a year passed before he found her. It was a quiet morning in a coastal town. The air carried the scent of the sea and the streets were peaceful. Walked past a small bookstore when he saw her. She stood outside the shop holding a stack of books, her hair moving gently in the breeze. For a moment could not move. After months of imagining this moment, he was suddenly afraid. What if she no longer loved him? What if she had healed and wanted nothing to do with him? Then turned. Their eyes met. The expression on her face changed from surprise to pain. Not hatred. Never hatred. That hurt even more. Said softly. She said nothing. He stepped closer. I searched for you. Her fingers tightened around the books. You found me. Her voice was calm, but he heard the sadness beneath it. Yes. Why? The question was simple. The answer was not. Because I was wrong. She looked away. I know I hurt you. Her silence encouraged him to continue. I spent my entire life believing love was something dangerous, something that made people weak. He swallowed. But then you came into my life. Looked at him again. You changed everything without even trying. Her eyes became brighter. I never wanted your title, I never wanted your wealth, I only wanted you to see me. I did see you. His voice broke. That was the problem, I saw you and I was terrified. She looked confused. Terrified? Yes. Stepped closer. Because you became important, because I cared, because losing you became something I could not survive. The words were everything he had refused to say before. Everything she had waited to hear. I thought if I never admitted my feelings, I could never be hurt. His expression softened. But losing you hurt more than I ever imagined. Tears formed in his eyes. You made me believe I meant nothing. I know. His voice lowered. And I will regret that forever. For a moment, neither spoke. The ocean waves moved quietly nearby. Then did something never expected. The powerful duke who had never bowed to anyone lowered himself before her. He knelt on the street. People nearby stopped and watched, but only looked at her. I love you. Her breath caught. I loved you before I understood it. I loved you when you challenged me, when you laughed at me, when you made this cold place feel alive. A tear slipped down her cheek. I was foolish. He held out his hand. And if there is even a small part of your heart that still remembers me kindly, please come back. Looked at him for a long moment. She remembered the pain, the loneliness, the night she left. But she also remembered the man beneath the cold exterior. The man who carried her books. The man who listened. The man who was trying now. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. I never stopped loving you. Closed his eyes in relief. Pulled him up and he embraced her as if he had been waiting an entire lifetime. Neither cared who watched. Neither cared about the past. For the first time, allowed himself to be completely honest. And for the first time, believed she was truly loved. A year later, estate was filled with celebration. The cold Duke was no longer known only for his power. People spoke of his devotion. They spoke of the way he looked at his wife as if she were the greatest treasure in the world. Brought warmth into the estate and never again hid how much she meant to him. Years later, they still walked through the same gardens where their story began. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the hills, held her hand. I spent so much time believing I would never love someone like you. Smiled, and he kissed her forehead. I was right. She raised an eyebrow. Smiled. There is no one like you. Laughed softly. And the man who was once called the Cold Duke spent the rest of his life proving that the greatest love stories are not the ones without pain. They are the ones where two hearts find their way back to each other.